One day, I decided to play a demo of Dragon Quest Builders. Prior to that, I didn't really care for the Dragon Quest series. The first one I tried was Dragon Quest III, the Game Boy version we got back when it was called Dragon Warrior 3, and I actually really enjoyed it. In fact, I was shocked at how much content was packed into this little game that originated on the NES from the 1980s. I spent so many hours grinding away at it only to get destroyed by the overpowered last boss, and I haven't gone back to try and beat it since. But despite its grindy nature, I enjoyed it quite a lot. A few years later, I tried Dragon Quest VIII on the PS2, and didn't last nearly as long on that one, just saying. I also have never once touched Minecraft. For one, it looked like a game that could potentially suck me in to the point of wasting too much time on it, so I was reluctant to try it. That, or the way the game looks and presents itself, would be so much of a turnoff that I would drop it. Yeah, I know it's a weird hang-up to have, but keep that in mind for later. So when Dragon Quest Builders was announced, I initially just brushed it off as something not for me. That is, until someone bugged and pestered me and eventually convinced me to just try the demo. And that's when it got me. On what was supposed to just be a small 2 to 4 hour slice of the game, I spent like 20 hours on. Even without a lot of the features of the main game, I found myself having a ton of fun with it and built a giant castle out of dirt, since that was the only material I could use.
Oh my!
And I eventually beat down the optional dragon boss with a stick.
The mighty stick!
Shortly after, the game went on sale for $20 off at the store, so I decided to pick it up. This game was a lot more fun than I expected it to be. You could say this game is more like an RPG with building mechanics, because it plays like an action RPG when you're not building, which differentiates itself from its inspiration, but also remains fairly simplistic. Even though I never got on with the mainline Dragon Quest games, I've always loved its Toriyama art style, as I was a big Dragon Ball Z fan back in the day. Everything in this series, from the cute animations and characters to the iconic monster designs, feels nostalgic as hell despite having no actual nostalgic ties to the series. And it works incredibly well in this Minecrafty style of game, and despite having no affinity towards Minecraft, I love the gameplay so much that I couldn't put it down. I can't remember exactly, and my PS4 can't tell me for some reason, but I must have spent around 250 hours in Dragon Quest Builders 1, getting every achievement including the Platinum Trophy. Then I spent the rest of my time building a ton of stuff in the sandbox mode. With all the talk of both Minecraft Steve and the Dragon Quest hero coming to Smash Bros. Back before the game came out, I initially included the Dragon Quest Builder as one of my most wanted Smash Bros. Characters in one of my oldest videos, saying that I imagined they would be much more fun to use than Steve or Hero would be, and I still believe that to this day after using both of them. However, Dragon Quest Builders 1 did one of the worst things you can do to a game of this style. Hard limitations on the one thing you're supposed to be doing for most of the entire game and post-game: building. They only allowed you to build things that were at most 30 blocks high if I remember correctly, and with most of the game's ground level being at 5 blocks or so, that leaves you with only roughly 25 blocks for most of your building space. So if you wanted to get creative, you had to work around that, as well as the limitation of putting multiple crafted/furniture items within a certain zone. It was unfortunate, but I managed to make something that I thought was pretty cool at least, and you can check that out in the video linked in the description. Fast forward to 2019, and Dragon Quest Builders 2 was about to release. When I got the demo of that game, I was impressed by the amount of improvements it had over the first one, and obviously I bought it immediately on day one, this time on the Nintendo Switch. Dragon Quest Builders 2 has a campaign that will last you around 50 to 60 hours unless you're really pushing yourself. Similar to the first game, your goal is to restore the places where people live by building it back up to its former glory in one way or another, and then defend the places against monster hordes. And those monsters will damage the places you've built, forcing you to be diligent and fend them off whenever they appear, which can be tedious at times, especially in the first game. But pro tip, you're not meant to stay and build these locations up forever. You're supposed to move on afterwards anyway, as you'll have plenty of time and space to build unobstructed later on to your heart's content. The game isn't very hard, but it does a lot of things to keep you on your toes throughout, making you need to upgrade your tools as a builder and your allies' equipment as well. Your role is an interesting one as a builder rather than a straight-up hero, even if you do the majority of the work as a fighter most of the time. In some cases, the game takes on aspects of a tower defense game, where you build lots of traps and lure your enemies into a dangerous gauntlet of destruction, especially in the Moonbrook level, which I think is the peak of the Dragon Quest Builders series as far as the campaigns go. As for the story, it was honestly surprisingly well done. It was a spin-off story from the world of Dragon Quest II that takes place in a sort of parallel world, and it had quite a few surprising and emotional moments, which was very welcome, given that I only expected a cheap throwaway spin-off story. I just wish it didn't move at such a snail's pace sometimes, but hey, details. After the long campaign, I spent hundreds of hours building upon the massive foundation given to us in the form of the Isle of Awakening, and made some pretty cool stuff, especially the desert area, which gave us a giant fancy pyramid to customize. You also get to unlock up to 3 free generated islands to build on, where I took all my resources to try and build a replica of the city of Vivec from the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. Unfortunately, I had to stop before all my visions for every region I built were fully realized. The Switch version runs like ass after you start building tons of things, which made it painful to play for long periods of time running at 10 FPS. Though credit to them for optimizing it as best they could with all the insanity going on at any given time on such weak hardware. There were still building limitations in place that carried over from the first game that disrupted my progress completely, including a block height limit of 95, a room limit of 100, NPC limit of 60, and it still stopped me from placing lots of furniture items in any given zone. I was very disappointed to learn this, and also to learn that the game has almost no mod support on PC, so none of these issues will ever be fixed as far as I can tell. Fortunately, the game runs damn near perfectly on PC in my experience. Solid frame rate, able to tab out and in with no hiccups, no crashes, and no other issues, so I think there's potential for something nice in the future if they decide to do it. I really want them to make a Dragon Quest Builders 3. I think I know what needs to be done to not only make it a very successful game, but also give it the staying power it deserves. It won't ever reach the staying power of Minecraft, sure, but there are things this game does that I think has the potential to make a very appealing game to a lot of people. I will be making a video about that next, so keep an eye out. If you haven't played this series, I highly recommend it even if you aren't a Dragon Quest fan, or even a Minecraft fan. You could play the first game if you want, but the second game is better in literally every way, with 99% of everything carried over, so you won't be missing out on the meh story of the first game unless you're a fan of the first Dragon Quest game, just saying. Anyway, feel free to drop a comment. What do you think of the series? What do you want out of a Dragon Quest Builders 3? Do you have any interesting builds you want to share? Do you think I'm a stupid weeb who should just play Minecraft instead? Bonk that like button with your builder's hammer and subscribe for more, including the next video on what I want out of a sequel. And as always, have high standards, low expectations.